If you're not going to use a piece of data between now and the end of the month, this piece of data should not be exposed until the end of the month.
Welcome back to Stand Out Before RSA. As I've said in the previous episodes, the goal of this series is very simple. We are looking to spotlight cybersecurity leaders who are bringing clarity and meaningful differentiation in a very crowded market as we head into RSA in a couple weeks. Everyone is talking all things cyber, AI, smarter detection, but very few are stepping back and asking a deeper question. Are we protecting data based on how it's actually being used, or are we still relying on static assumptions? Today, I'm joined by Ariel Zamir, co-founder and CEO of RSA Security. RSA Security is positioned to be the first predictive data security platform designed to anticipate how enterprise data will be accessed and used and apply protections before exposure occurs. So Ariel, great to have you with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So just jumping right in, as I just referenced, you guys have positioned yourselves at RSA Security as the first predictive data security platform. Can you help those of us who are maybe not as aware of what that is? What is predictive security? What does it really mean in practice? And why does that approach matter in today's threat landscape as compared to more traditional tools and platforms?
Yeah, thank you. So about 10 years ago, there's been a shift with data security. I know that because I was amongst the pioneers of data security, but 9 or 10 years ago, I started up a company that did data classification. This evolved to become what we know today as DSPM. We're not doing that anymore because after we got acquired, I had one pivotal meeting where I jumped on a call with a CISO and we opened the Zoom and I'm super confident. I'm smiling. I know this is going to be a hit because we found so much information that this guy needs to know about. It's not allowed to not know about what you have in your data. And that's, at least that was the legacy conception. And I was like, hey, look at all the things we found for you. And from the get-go, I realized that this guy is not happy. And he's like, Ariel, what'd you do to me? And I'm like, what did I do to you? And he goes, Ariel, I feel, he shares his screen with me. And I see that my dashboard shows 500,000 alerts. And at first I was proud because I knew we were right. We spot on. We found so many things. And it's like, Ariel, I feel as if I'm in the control room of the 3 Mile Island with everything around me blinking. The whole dashboard lights up. I don't know which reactor is going to melt down, where the problem is. It's cluttered. And this was an epiphany to me because I realized that what we've been doing for years is just trying to surface everything with no prioritization whatsoever. And in reality, data security cannot work this way. It's infeasible. If you know data security, you know that you need to prioritize. You cannot just surface 500,000 alerts. And what we're doing today is we harness the power of modern AI to predict what data is about to get used over the next short period of time. And the truth is, think about it, it's rather radical. If you're not going to use a piece of data between now and the end of the month, this piece of data should not be exposed until the end of the month. And if we could predict what data is going to be needed for the business between now and the end of the month, this is only the data that you actually need exposed. And the reality is that the proportion of the data that you use in any given month is very small. Most of the times, way less than 5%, even 2% of the data you have. And think about it. It means that at any point in time, if you play your cards right, we can help you reduce your exposure by over 90% at the data layer level. That's a revolution.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I just think in my day-to-day of how many files and documents and all that I have sitting on my screen and that I don't even think about. So at a more obvious, a much more macro level, at the company level, I can see the extrapolation there. But I'm curious, Ariel, when you start kind of getting into the data that companies have, what blind spots do you see that a lot of companies have in their data security strategy? And obviously, you've kind of touched on it already, but how does predictive usage kind of fill those gaps for those companies?
So they have three blind spots. When I explain to them that they don't use most of their data, they're like, oh, of course, we know that. We have this huge amount of data we never use. Well, let's tear it off and think this is trivial. The blind spot there is the how small the actual amount of data you're going to use over the next couple of weeks really is. That is a huge blind spot. The other blind spot that we see is how aggressively over-permissioned and overly accessible your data is compared to the actual usage. We have on our system on our platform one of the charts that I like the most, which shows you the difference between the number of unique permissions on your data layer. And on the same graph, you have a line, which is the number of unique permissions that you have used on any given day. And the proportions are 1,000 to 1, which means 99.9 something percent of the permissions go unused. You can have 30 million permissions on any given day, but you've only used 30,000. Think how large the unnecessary risk that organizations like this take. And that's a huge blind spot for them. And the third blind spot is that they don't realize how fast agentic AI is catching up with essentially multiplying by a factor of 50 the data access pattern intensity. So if you had 1,000 employees, your enterprise now accesses data as if they have 50,000 employees. And now you need to really be on top of your data movements. These are the main three blind spots. How little of the data is really needed to generate revenue, how large the unnecessary permission chunk that you have is, and how fast agentic AI is catching up.
Right. So I hear you say that, and in my brain, I hear almost two sort of parallel problems. There's like a mindset problem from organizationally of data, just again in the macro, or potentially there's processes or tooling issues, right? Would you say it's more of one or the other, or maybe like an equal split of both tooling versus mindset for these organizations that sort of create these blind spots for them?
It's a great notion because the thing that we see is because the mindset isn't there, they don't have the tools.
Fair.
They don't realize what they don't realize, so they don't even have the tools to fix it because they never knew what to search for you. So, I mean, if you only knew that 99% of your permissions, you can eliminate in nothing. Zero things are going to happen. Zero thing for the next 2 years. Zero things are going to happen. If you just thought about it and wrapped your head around it, you would be like, oh my God.
Right.
See?
Yeah. So that absolutely.
Yeah.
So I one thing I've heard from people in security that that a lot of or those that are using tools and platforms, right, that there's a lot of security solutions out there on the market that can create some friction for a company, right, or slow down workflows, right? So how do you at Ray Security balance the the need for data protection, but also kind of the balance of seamless operations for the client, so there isn't this friction, especially those perhaps in more highly regulated industries?
Yeah, that's the second part of my pitch. Because if you only heard the first part of my pitch, you'd be like, oh, I'm never going to revoke any of these permissions. And in reality, you won't. You may revoke some of them, which are trivial, but nobody's going to revoke all of the permissions. You're going to revoke some of them. You need to strike a balance between not letting people access the data and letting people do their job, right? You just need to find a way to do it. And we've found a way where we, in fact, don't really rely on permissions. Permission hygiene is a nice thing. It's been a great thing for the last 30 years, and they were super successful. And I don't think it's going to be the panacea to all the problems there. What we are doing, we're monitoring the access. And think about it. You can keep all your permissions intact, just let everybody access everything, but just count and take note of what they're doing in real time based on the logs of the access to the data.
Yep.
And we're doing this with some super sophisticated things that we put in place. And now we know what each and every one of your employees is doing at any point in time. And we can say, hey, this guy has permission to do that, but they never use these permissions, and definitely not 100 of these permissions within 10 minutes. You definitely want to look into this. So we have all these kind of sophisticated things that we do without actually revoking the access, so that the normal day-to-day operation remains intact. Everything you need to do or potentially would have wanted to do, you can still do it.
Right.
But once you try to do something funny, we'll probably at least alert or even block it. And by the way, when we block, we'll let you self-service certify yourself, so to speak, so that the CISO team, security team, doesn't even need to know about it. They could if they wanted, but we'll let you continue with your flow. We are very much oriented towards self-service and access everything you want, but let's control what people are accessing. Because think about it. What are you trying to solve? You're trying to prevent someone from stealing your data, right? If you want to prevent them from stealing, if they stole 2 files, typically that's not the big deal. You want to know about it, but it's very hard to prevent. No tool in the world does this. But if they try to steal 20 files, we'll probably be there and block that. So we solve for the file data breach. We solve for data corruption. We tremendously help with regulatory requirements. And then there is a third thing, which is agentic AI. And you want to know which data your agents access, because if you don't, that's going to be a nightmare.
So it's almost like you read my mind on my next question, because I wanted to zoom out. I mean, AI is such a hot topic just generically in the world right now, but obviously as we head into RSA, you just see AI is popping up everywhere, at every booth, at every pitch, every discussion, right? So how do you see agentic AI transforming enterprise security risk? And then what are the unique challenges that presents to an organization?
100% revolution. That's a revolution that's one in a decade, and I'm generous. It's going to change the whole way we think about security, about data access, about software development. And it's not just me saying that. It's much wiser people. I see that with data security every day now. And it's a change. It wasn't like that two years ago. But I hear CISOs tell me, I did not want to go on a data security project. I did not want to do it. That's their words. I'm forced to, because I realized that once agentic AI is set loose, all hell breaks loose. I'm going to lose control completely over what's going on with my data. Just yesterday, a CISO told me, I was trying to avoid data security for my entire career. I don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah. So I hear this debate, I guess, is the risk that AI creates underestimated or overhyped? It sounds, based on that answer, I would say you might fall on the underestimated side in the macro, that the average person's probably underestimating the risk, but those dealing with the day-to-day are spot on. They're not overhyping it. It's real, that it's coming, that it's probably here, frankly. So is that fair to say that there's in the larger scale of the industry and just the world at large, there's a significant underestimation of the risk associated with AI?
100%, because there are steps to this. If 3 years ago we had ChatGPT and it was like, oh my God, well, this thing really answers me. Now, and this has its own set of risks. Copilot creates overexposure and whatnot, these chats and tools. All right. Agentic AI is a whole new thing. It's a way to have 50 new entities reaching out to some ChatGPT-like entity that you don't really control. And they're being directed by vague, non-deterministic instructions from people whose profession is not software engineering, with zero quality assurance, and are set loose to access every data they want to. What can go wrong, right?
Right. Right. So I want to come back to kind of Ray security and you and the idea of predictive security, right? So can you help illustrate, kind of paint a picture for me of some examples of how the idea of predictive security that you guys are doing shifts that risk profile, knowing that the risk continues to increase as you just alluded to. What are you doing to help shift that and kind of minimize that?
So we had this enterprise, a North American enterprise. There are over 25,000 people, and the CISO literally told me, I'm not going to classify all my data. I'm not going to set policies in place for everything. It's going to take me 3 years. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not suggesting you all. It's just impractical. So why would you? And it was like, everybody pitches me to try and do that. What's your idea? And I was like, let me try. And 30 days later, we come back, and I handed them a report. And on this report, there was, here are the files you used last month, and here are the files you're going to use. And you can see for your own eyes that it's 1.8%, your overall files. Let me ask you something. If I were to alert on anything that's, and we've predicted what you're going to access, and test me. If we're able to predict what you're going to access, would you be comfortable having some alert in place if somebody does something funny outside the prediction? So we said, hey, this is what's going to happen, but suddenly something major, not like a small mistake, something major is off. Would you like to know about it? I was like, yeah, let's try. And within 4 months, we're able to reduce the number of permissions by over 98%. The overall exposure of the data by 90-something, 91, 92%, because some of the data they kept just for safety. We even saved them a lot of money because we monitored the data and we're like, even beyond prediction, here's a bunch of data you literally don't need, and we help them tear it off. So we both improved their financial stance, dramatically improved their security and exposure stance, over 90%. And that's without trying to even understand what's inside a single file. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say, how do you quantify that? But you pretty much answered that in your answer. So I appreciate that. So,
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, you quantify it by asking, if I were a random, and that's a blast radius report we have. And the blast radius report is essentially a report that says, hey, I've gone through DICE and selected one of the entities in this organization at random and cracked their password and logged in, which happens. 99% of the attacks are compromised accounts and not like somebody utilizing a zero-day attack on the DNS reverse tunnel kind of fancy things. It's just somebody managed to take over an account, right? So at random, I'd pick an account. What are the chances that I can cause you damage that's substantial? And the answer in their case was 95% of the accounts have way more. If I were to just steal all the data that any of these 95% of the accounts have, that's a huge damage, both financial, reputational, business, you know. And we're able to reduce this to like negligible damage for 99% of the accounts. So it's just a very measurable KPI.
Absolutely. Yeah, that helps those in charge make decisions. I would imagine KPIs are good to lean back.
Exactly. You know, and all this without any agents and within like 3 months, not like a 2-year project with consulting firm and whatnot and like hell of a project management thing. 3 months, 0 agents, 0 deployments, just connect through the APIs, review the data, predict what you actually need, get the basic hygiene in place, get the basic alerting policies in place. That's all. 95% of the risk is gone.
Absolutely. So yeah, I hear this is like, I love what I'm hearing, but I'm curious, as sort of you're in this new category, right, in the cyberspace, and kind of creating some elbow room for yourself. How have you been approaching go to market to this point, right? Because there's obviously, on some level, there's an education process about, what it is that you do, why it is that you do it, and who benefits the most, right? So how have you been approaching go to market? Has it been, direct to the customers? Have you been going through partners? Is there a combination of both? If you could share that, that'd be great.
It's actually was fascinating because we have great relationships with a bunch of an amazing group of partners, and they have such a great reach to the market. So we both enjoy the traditional go-to-market motion where people are already educated by the partners. At the same time, we're lucky to have two great streams of tailwinds that helped us, which were ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and Claude, which pretty much transformed everything we know about data access. And everybody's freaked out now. That's reality. And the second thing is that we came post the first wave of the DSPMs, and we get a steady stream of customers who are disappointed with the DSPM's inability to take action. And they're like, hey, I put 2 years to classify my data. Now I know everything that there is to know about my data, way more than I can actually know. I'm swamped with reports. But they pretty much left me to solve the problem myself. And would you guys integrate with them, do your thing with the prediction, and actually reduce the risk? Because people are tired. So they want something that they integrate. And by the way, I'm not saying don't classify your data. Classify your data. I'm just saying let us focus on where and data classification really makes sense, and don't classify the data that doesn't make sense to classify, because you're not going to access it ever, essentially, right? So we integrate. We play nice with both these motions. People are like, hey, I classify my data. What's next? And we're the next thing. And people are like, I want to access data with my AI. What's next? And we're what can set me up for a right start there? And we're the tool that'll help you. And then our partners are like just going to market, and people are, of course they need that.
So as you're going to market through partners and all of that, who gets it first? My guess is probably the CISO, right? But what's the discussion in the sort of the more tech focused portions of organizations versus perhaps the leadership and at the C level that maybe aren't as technically focused? What's sort of the parallel conversations you're having to have?
This is super interesting because CISOs get it immediately. But they're like, I need the leverage. I need the right reason to deploy such a tool. And business managers, business executives definitely get that they need to prevent AI from accessing everything they have. This they get. And most of them get immediately that if you look at things that you don't use, you may even end up saving some money. And with some of our deployments, we're able to demonstrate $200,000, $300,000, and $400,000 annual saving on just just hygiene, cleaning up stuff and whatnot. And managers are like, all right, that's a good enough reason to try it out.
It makes sense to me.
Oh.
So Ariel, my last question for you as we kind of start to wrap up here is, you're the leader of a company that's forging a new category, right? In a not uncrowded market, certainly, right? So what advice would you give to other founders or organizational leaders that are looking to kind of chart their own course, or at the very least innovate in a crowded cybersecurity landscape?
Know your market. Know your market. It's the most important thing. Know your domain. Understand. I didn't start my next company in the SOC optimization domain because I don't understand the first thing about this domain. I started the second company in the domain where I have profound understanding and I know the mechanics of the domain. I know how people buy. I know why they buy. and I know how data behaves, and I know what technology can do. And you need to be able to come to the table with a solid thesis saying, hey, this is what's going on today with the market. These are the forces that are driving this market. And this is what's probably going to happen next couple of years. And here's what the market's going to need. And we're building for this. And if you do that, things will line up. You'll find the right investors, because you'll stumble upon somebody who understands. You'll find the right investors, and we were very lucky at that. You'll find the right customers, because they'll say, hey, you have zero proof behind you, but I do buy into this thesis. And there's the first set of customers, and you need this solid understanding that resonates with people, and everything starts from this.
No, that's great advice. I really appreciate that. So, and this has been a great conversation, Ariel. I'd love to, if you could let the listeners and viewers know how best to follow Ray Security, connect with you guys. Where can people find you?
Yeah, we're easy to find. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on raysecurity.io. Ping me and I'll just reply pretty much within 6 hours.
Perfect. No, that's a hefty promise, but I'm sure people will hold you to it. So,
my agents reply to everything today.
There you go.
I pretty much outsourced my entire CEO role.
Smart man. So, well, Ariel, I appreciate the conversation, and thank you all for listening and watching Stand Out Before RSA. We look forward to seeing everyone in San Francisco in a few weeks. Thank you so much.